Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me on another episode of TokYoYo. My name is T. Today we're looking at another yo-yo that I received recently. Today we're going to be looking at a very interesting little, I guess you'd say undersized, but also super wide yo-yo. Today we're going to be talking about the Capitals Yoyo Authentic. So is this yo-yo faking, or is this yo-yo the real deal? Alright, so let's take a closer look at the Authentic. So the shape here is, I guess this is kind of a W shape, although the rims are absolutely enormous, as you can see here. The area before the rim itself is actually pretty small. It's just big enough for finger grinds, and then these rims are just absolutely gigantic. But I would classify this as a W shape. Inside the cup, it's actually a very, very deep cup. You have some little cuts in here, and then in the very center, you've got a little nub for the axle, as well as some more engravings, and the splash that is on the outside of the yo-yo continues. And then on the very outermost part of the rim here, you have engravings as well. Now, as far as I know from the Capitals Yo-Yo website, these are diakonese motifs, which is like a special design, and I believe it comes from Borneo. At least that's where the original design aesthetic came from. The material on this is 6061, and as far as I could find on the website where you can buy this, Capitals Yo-Yo, it is also sandblasted. So this is a very, very matte finish. The feel is surprisingly comfortable. Now this thing is actually wide. I'll compare it to a couple of other yo-yos in a second, but it's surprisingly comfortable. When I first held it, I didn't think it would be, but something about the way these rims come out, they're not particularly rounded or anything, and there is like an extra lip around the edge here, but it just fits in the hand really nicely. Something about where it hits your palm just feels very comfortable, and your finger can get into that groove really nice too. And the look is really cool. You've got red here, you've got a little bit of this gold splash, and then around all the rest of it, you've got this really intense green kind of teal splash, and then the diakonese motifs that I mentioned before. So it all together just has this really cool, unique look. I don't think I've really seen a yo-yo that looks quite like this, with the color combo and the shape and then the little motif to go with it. It's quite nice looking. So here is the Authentic next to the Bliss. Now the interesting thing you can see here is that the diameter of this yo-yo is actually quite small. I think that's where the undersized feeling comes from. But actually in the width, it is even wider than the Bliss, which I think a lot of people consider to be kind of a wide yo-yo. You can see here it's got quite a bit of a height difference on the Bliss. Quite a bit actually, but it never feels super wide. I think that's because the small diameter helps it kind of make a little bit more sense in the hand and on the catch. So I got this yo-yo from Capitals Yo-Yo for review purposes. As I always mention, TokYoYo is not a business. I do this as a passion, a hobby, so I'm not in this to make money. I'm not in this to make ads for anyone. It's just cool when people think to send me stuff to try out. But I had always been kind of curious about Capitals Yo-Yo. They're quite active on Instagram, and I've seen a lot of people kind of mention them here and there. They're not like your Yo-Yo Factory or your Caribou Lodge or anything like that. They're not one of the bigger companies. So I think they make very active pushes on social media to try to get their yo-yos out there. So that's kind of where I'd seen them the most. And they've got quite a few models. There's the Amelia, the Antidote, a couple other models that are really cool looking. And this is kind of their undersized, sandblasted, super wide model. I didn't really know much about it until I picked up the yo-yo. I actually knew very little about the company besides what I'd seen on Instagram. So Capitals Yo-Yo is a yo-yo company that's out of Indonesia. So it seems like there's a little bit of a scene, like a yo-yo scene in Indonesia. Like Southeast Asia, there's a lot of companies that are appearing, or companies that have been around for a year or two, or even longer than that. And it's neat because you don't usually think of countries outside of like China and America and Japan, like maybe Canada with Caribou Lodge, as being like really big yo-yo countries. So it's really cool to see these little companies popping up in other countries, and it kind of gives the yo-yo community more variety, I think, too. As far as how it plays, it's not exactly the fastest yo-yo, and maybe that's because of the width. It has this kind of illusion of being super wide and a little bit difficult to move when you first start playing with it. But actually I found that the longer I play with it, that doesn't really seem to be the case anymore. It's still not the speediest yo-yo ever. There's some There's a special kind of density to it that is hard to explain. But once you kind of get used to how it plays, once you get used to how wide it feels, it gets a little bit easier to manage. But it does have a very solid, stable feel to it. Again, because of the kind of unusual shape and size, I wasn't sure what to expect in the stability zone, but it's been very, very stable when I've played with it. Especially when you're playing with like string tricks like Eli hops and things that can tend to turn your plane if you're not being too careful. I found that it's surprisingly stable in that regard. And also the spin time, I was shocked the first few times I played with it because I expected the spin to kind of die out. It's like a brand new yo-yo and stuff like that. It might be lubed up the bearing. But it spins for a really long time. I had some binds come back that I was like shocked. They actually came back and it almost hit me in the face. So this thing has a very, very nice long spin to it. The response is really good too. It's one of those yo-yos that has a really satisfying snap, and it's one of those yo-yos that doesn't seem to snag ever. The response in this is real nice. But yeah, because of the width, it's really easy to hit string tricks. This is one of those yo-yos that you play with when you want to feel confident, when you want to feel like you can hit all your tricks. No problem moving it around the string. It glides real nicely. The weight isn't too intense, although I did mention it is kind of like solid and dense feeling. You don't feel like it really thuds on the string or anything like that, which sometimes you find with undersized yo-yos. They do tend to thud around because it's hard to distribute the weight in a comfortable way. This doesn't seem to have that problem. So I know they mentioned that it's undersized on their site, but I definitely don't feel that. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because of the small diameter that people say it's undersized, but I don't know. I guess it kind of reminds me of the Desperado, the Magic Yo-Yo N5, in that way where it's like wide, but it's got a tiny diameter at the same time, so it feels small but big at the same time. So not only is it good with string tricks, it's just very predictable because of that. You can kind of rely on it. You know where it's going to go and you know what you can do with it. And because of that too, slacks and whips are going to be really comfortable to hit on this. It's extremely easy because this size just inspires confidence to just let you be able to hit those tricks whenever you want to. It has great grinds. So I mentioned before that this has a sandblast on it, and the groove in here is really perfect for finger grinds. There's no problem with that at all. And it's really quiet when it's finger grinding too, which is nice. It doesn't like bounce around or skitter or anything like that. It's just really solid and smooth on a finger grind. Finger spins are so-so. You can kind of get them. There's the engraving in there that doesn't really interfere with it, but there's a little bit of an open cup, but then there's the axle nub as well. So it can do them, but it's not going to be the best at them. But yeah, I have to say, you know, like I said, I wasn't really sure what to expect from the Authentic or from Capital's Yo-Yo in general. And this is another one of those companies that just kind of impressed me a lot because this thing is really, really butter smooth. Sort of reminds me of like the Osiris Yo-Yos I've reviewed and the ACO and stuff like that. How these little independent companies are just putting out this stuff that is quality controlled to an absolute T. Like, it's really amazing. And I think it's kind of, I kind of hope it puts bigger companies on notice, because you have these little companies that are just coming out of the gate swinging, putting out these yo-yos that are just buttered, dead smooth, that have no blemishes on them, no like sense of damage or anything like that. It's kind of nice when these little companies can come out and just show the big dogs how it's done properly. One thing I'd like to mention too, there's a coupon code that I was given by the owner of the website. So if you are interested in picking one of these up or taking a look at anything else in the store, I'm gonna have the coupon code down in the description, so make sure you check that out. I'm not saying you should go buy anything or anything like that. I'm not an advertiser, but if this does pique your interest and you want to go grab one, you know, it might be a good time for you. All right, so let's talk pros and cons of the Authentic. So as I mentioned many times, it's wide, and I do like that. I like a big wide yo-yo, and the fun thing about this though is that it does have the smaller diameter, so it does have a really nice hand feel to it, but you get the width at the same time, so it's kind of like best of both worlds. The engravings are cool. I think that's really neat. I think it's really cool that they're kind of taking stuff that's a little bit more regional, a little bit more specialized, and doing something cool with it. Like a lot of times when companies release yo-yos, you don't really see a lot of the identity of the country that made them in the yo-yo. I think because all companies are trying to, you know, do the international thing. But sometimes, once in a while, like you had sometimes iYoyo releases like yo-yos with the German color scheme on them, or they released the Ippon recently that has the Japanese flag motif on it. So it's really cool when companies come out and try to do something that is more local or more personalized to them. The hand feel is really nice, as I mentioned, not only the way it catches and everything, but just in the hand because of that small diameter, because of that kind of wide shape. There's plenty of space in there for your finger. It's really comfortable, and I didn't expect that at all. I love a good response. I mean, who doesn't? That's one of the most important things in a yo-yo, in my opinion. And it's butter. It's just butter smooth. Like I said, I feel like companies like this are putting big companies on notice. I think big companies need to really step up their game and really, you know, take heed of all these little companies that are putting out stuff that's just really solid. As far as cons, I don't really have anything. I think all the cons that you might have for this are more just dependent on what you feel as a yo-yo player. So if you're not a big fan of smaller diameter yo-yos, or you're not a fan of wider yo-yos, this probably isn't going to be the yo-yo for you. But otherwise, I mean, it's butter smooth, it grinds real nice, it's got a real nice finish to it, it looks really cool with these different engravings, and the other model of the Authentic that you get has different engravings, so kind of you can get different styles and stuff like that. But I just think it's cool to support these little companies, and I think it's really cool that this is as playable as it is. Like, this is definitely a yo-yo that I think people would really enjoy as an everyday carry, just because it fits right into that budget yo-yo zone, but it does so many things just right, and it looks really cool. And yeah, I just think it's a really cool yo-yo to have, and I think you should give it a try if you're interested. Alright, thank you so much for watching today. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave me a like, a comment, a subscription. I'd really appreciate it. Don't forget there's the coupon code down in the description if you'd like to go and check out Capital's Yo-Yo. Again, like I said, I'm not advertising them, but they did mention that there's a coupon code, so if you're interested, it would be a good time for you to check them out. Alright, thanks so much for watching. Take care, have a nice day, and sayonara.